Congratulations, you just got your first set of hearing aids. And the first few days, instead of feeling like the world opened up, everything sounds weird. Your own voice sounds like you're talking inside a tin can. The refrigerator is suddenly the loudest thing in the house. And you're starting to wonder, did I get the wrong hearing aids? Did the audiologist do something wrong? Are they broken? And somewhere in the back of your head, there's a harder question. What if I just spent thousands of dollars on something that doesn't work for me? Many of our patients think this, and almost every time nothing is wrong. What you're experiencing is completely normal. Your brain has spent years trying to compensate for missing sounds, and now suddenly it's getting them all back at once. That does take some adjustment. I'm Dr. Layne Garrett, founder of Timpanogos Hearing and Tinnitus here in Utah, and I've been fitting hearing aids for over 20 years, and I've walked thousands of patients through this transition. And today I'm going to show you what to expect, what's normal, and what to actually do about it, and also when to call your audiologist. I'm also going to explain something that most clinics never take the time to tell you, that getting to your best hearing isn't a single appointment. It's a process. A good one, but a process.
If you're navigating hearing loss or struggling with ringing in your ears, then you've come to the right place. The All Ears Hearing and Tinnitus podcast is your go-to source for expert insights, real stories, and cutting-edge solutions in hearing health. We'll dive into the latest advancements in hearing healthcare, explore groundbreaking treatments for tinnitus, and offer practical tips for better hearing. Here to help you tune into a world of better hearing, here's your host from Timpanogos Hearing and Tinnitus, Dr. Layne Garrett.
Before anything else, you need to understand what's going on inside your brain right now, because once you get this, everything else will make a lot more sense. When you have hearing loss, your brain adapts. It stops expecting certain sounds, those high-pitched speech, background noise, your own footsteps, and it compensates by working harder to fill in those gaps. Over time, the auditory system essentially recalibrates itself around the hearing loss. Hearing aids flip that process in reverse. Now your brain suddenly is getting flooded by sounds it hasn't heard for years, and it doesn't know quite what to do with all that yet. Research published in Ear and Hearing found that new hearing aid users showed measurable improvements in background sound tolerance over the first few months, consistent with the brain actively learning how to tune out those newly audible sounds that aren't important. The brain is just sorting things out and it needs some time. So the tin can voice, normal. The refrigerator hum, normal. The sense of being a little overstimulated, completely normal. This isn't a sign that your hearing aids are wrong, it's a sign that they're actually working. Now, if that explanation helped you relax a little bit, good. That's what my channel is for. Now, knowing your brain needs time to adjust is one thing. What most people don't know is that your audiologist is actually managing that adjustment on purpose behind the scenes. Most people assume they leave the fitting appointment with their new hearing aids set to exactly where they need to be. That's usually not the case, and for good reason. When your audiologist runs your hearing test, they generate a prescription, a precise calculation of exactly how much amplification you need at each frequency to make speech fully audible to you again. That's your target, and it's built from validated formulas developed over decades of research. But for a lot of new users, jumping straight to that target on day one is like going from no exercise at all to trying to run 6 miles on your first warning. Technically the right goal, practically overwhelming. So what we do instead is start you at a lower percentage of that targets, sometimes 70%, sometimes a little lower depending on how long you've been without good amplification and how your hearing loss is presenting. Your brain starts to get used to sounds as being clearer and louder, but it's not hit with the full target at once. Then over the next few weeks, we gradually step the amplification up. This is a real clinical technique. Modern hearing aid software has what's called an adaptation manager built right into the software. A 2014 study published in the Hearing Review evaluated this approach and found that participants had no perception of the loudness changes over that adaptation period, even as the volume increased 5% per week, and speech clarity was consistently rated between good and very good the entire time. The brain adapts so naturally that most people don't even notice that the volume or the clarity is increasing. The end goal is always your full prescriptive target. We're not going to leave you underfit. We're getting you there in a way that your brain can actually keep up with. That gradual stepping up process is the right approach, but it only works if the starting numbers are accurate. And that's where a lot of clinics are quietly dropping the ball. Only about 30% of clinics actually do something called real ear measurements, which frankly is a problem. Here's what those are. After fitting your hearing aids, we can put a tiny microphone in your ear canal while you're wearing them. We play calibrated sounds and measure exactly how much amplification is actually reaching your eardrum. Not what the computer software thinks is happening, not what the manufacturer says should be happening, but what is actually happening in your ear. And why does that matter? Because every ear canal is different. The shape, the length, the volume of your ear canal all affect how sound behaves inside of that. Two people can have identical hearing tests wearing identical hearing aids and get completely different amounts of actual amplification just because of the differences in their anatomy. The only way we can know what's really happening is to measure it. Without doing that, your hearing aids might be under-amplifying and you're not hearing as well as you could, or they might be over-amplifying at certain frequencies, which causes fatigue and discomfort and sharpness that new users sometimes complain about. And tying this back to the acclimatization process, if we're stepping your amplification up from 70% to 100% of the target over several weeks, we need to know what those percentages correspond to with your actual ear. Without real ear measurements, we're adjusting numbers that might have nothing to do with reality. So if you're working with a clinic that's never mentioned real ear measurements, ask them, do you do real ear? If the answer is no, or they seem unfamiliar with the term, that's a red flag. All of that happens on our end, but the single biggest factor in whether this process works, the one thing that's entirely in your control, is far simpler than that. It's this: wear your hearing aids consistently, every day. Another study in Ear and Hearing found that new hearing aid users who wore their hearing aids more than 6 hours a day showed significantly better speech and noise performance after 12 weeks compared to people who wore them inconsistently. Wearing them all the time isn't just about comfort, it's your brain getting the chance to actually improve its ability to process and understand sounds. The target is around 8 hours a day. If that's too much at first, you can build up gradually, add an hour every day. But push yourself. The discomfort of early hearing aid wearing is temporary. The benefits compound. Quick question, before we go further, drop a comment right now. How many hours a day are you wearing your hearing aids? It takes 5 seconds and it helps me understand where most people are getting stuck on their journey. I read every one of them. Now, one caveat here. If you're having real physical pain, ear canal soreness or headaches or pressure that doesn't ease up, that's not your brain getting used to things. Call the audiologist. Discomfort or pain are two very different things. Wear time is the foundation, but how you spend that time in the first few weeks also matters. A few habits can really accelerate the process significantly. Start in quiet environments. Your first week is not the time to test yourself in the crowded restaurants. Start at home in quieter conversations. Let your brain calibrate to normal speech before you throw it into those challenging, noisy places. Turn the TV down. Most new hearing aid users are shocked by how loud they've been listening to their TV. Turn it down. Forcing yourself to listen at lower volumes with your hearing aids in actually accelerates the adjustment process and rewires your brain toward a healthier baseline for sound processing. You can also read aloud or listen to audiobooks. Reading aloud while wearing your hearing aids connects the sound of words that you know with what you're hearing, which helps your brain map the new amplified sound to familiar patterns. Even 20 minutes a day makes a difference. Also, don't adjust the volume control constantly. Modern hearing aids will handle most environments automatically. Constantly reaching for the volume control prevents your brain from adapting. Give the hearing aids a chance to work. And also keep a simple log. When something sounds off or uncomfortable, write it down. Restaurant background noise is still overwhelming, or my voice still sounds hollow. That log is gold at your follow-up appointments. It tells your audiologist exactly what needs to be adjusted. Without it, we're kind of guessing. With it, we can target specific problems precisely. All of these habits help your brain adjust to new sounds, but there's a separate piece of this that addresses something hearing aids alone can't fix, and it's the step that most clinics are leaving out. I can usually tell in the first follow-up visit who's going to succeed long-term, and it's not based on the hearing aid they bought. It's not even based on how severe their hearing loss is. It's based on whether they did the work to retrain their brain. Because hearing aids restore the sound, what they can't do on their own is retrain how your brain processes the sound. When you've had untreated hearing loss for years, your brain doesn't just lose volume, it loses processing efficiency. It gets worse at separating speech from noise. It gets worse at tracking people who are talking quickly. It develops compensatory habits, relying more on context, on lip reading, on guessing, that take real effort to unlearn. You can have perfectly fit hearing aids and still struggle in noise because your brain hasn't relearned how to use the information it's receiving now. That's where aural rehabilitation comes in. Programs like LACE, which stands for Listening and Communication Enhancement, are structured auditory brain training exercises designed specifically for this. A study published in the Journal of the American Academy of Audiology found that participants improved speech understanding and noise by up to 40% with this training. Another study in ear and hearing found that aural rehabilitation enhances neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to reorganize and adapt, and that plays a direct role in long-term listening improvement. And what that means practically, your brain is not broken, it's plastic and it's learning, but it needs the right inputs to be able to do it. In my clinic, every new hearing aid patient gets started on LACE AI, which is the updated version of the program. The protocol is simple, 15 minutes a day for the first 30 days. The patients who complete it adapt faster, get less fatigued in difficult listening situations, and tend to get more out of their hearing aids at every technology level. If your clinic fit you with hearing aids and said nothing about aural rehabilitation, ask them directly. Do you have a hearing rehab program for new users? Again, if the answer is no, or they wave it off as something that's not important, that also tells you something about the depth of care they're providing. Adjusting to hearing aids is work, but it's short-term work with very specific payoffs. I've watched patients go from frustrated and ready to quit, convinced that the hearing aids were completely wrong and their brain would never adapt, to the moment it clicks. A phone call with a grandchild that they could finally follow. A family dinner where they caught the joke instead of faking it. Or a work meeting where they walked out feeling sharp instead of exhausted. That's what's on the other side of this process. Wear your hearing aids consistently, starting in quiet environments. Do your rehabilitation training, and every day keep that log and give your brain time to catch up. The first few days are the hardest. It gets easier, and then it gets good. If you want more guidance on getting the most from your hearing aids, including the questions to ask your audiologist at your first appointments, how to know if your fitting was actually been verified, and how to get the most out of hearing rehabilitation, I've put together a free learning center with resources on all of these topics. The link can be found in the description. And if you're here in Northern Utah and want this process done right, using proper verification and structured acclimatization and hearing rehabilitation, you can make an appointment in one of our clinics. We'll walk you through it. A link to make that appointment is in the description. Remember, the first few weeks are kind of hard, but stick with it.
A world of better hearing and relief from tinnitus is within reach, and we're here to help. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast right now and join us on the journey to clearer sound and a richer life. Thanks for listening to the All Ears Hearing and Tinnitus podcast with Dr. Layne Garrett. We'll see you next time.